Get my 6. What's up, guys? So about 3 weeks or so ago, maybe a month ago, one of our neighbors, and I promised this individual I would never tell who they are, and forgive me, there's a bunch of gnats right here. It's 90 degrees today, and I'm sitting just inside the wood line to try to stay cool, but so are the gnats, obviously. They're like hovering right here, trying to stay cool too. But it was a video here, right back here in the woods. There's a place where like multiple properties come together like a pie, like a piece, like the center of a pie. Something was captured on camera. It looked kind of like a blob. People have been saying, what was it? How come you never give any follow-up to your videos? You suck. I hate you. You're a moron. I hope bad things happen to you, etc., etc. Of course, we pray for these people. Then we ban them. But I thought I would take this opportunity today to talk about what it is I think that thing might be, potentially. And no, I don't think it's a Bigfoot Sasquatch. It didn't look like a Bigfoot Sasquatch. It looked like something, some sort of cryptid. But I believe that this sort of cryptid is one that we don't quite yet have a name for. Well, I have one, but let's talk for another time. But I think, well, it wasn't Bigfoot Sasquatch in my opinion. Now, we've heard a lot of talk in the last decade or so about skinwalkers. Could it have been a skinwalker? Potentially. But I still have my doubts. So what I'm going to do is read you a story from this behemoth book, Bigfoot Sasquatch Files, Anthology 1. This is volumes 1 through 10, all combined. And no, you know, when the people comment about how much I suck and how much they hate me and they want bad things to happen to me, they say it's all about book sales. No, I'm not trying to sell this book today because I can't. Because as of this recording right now, it's already sold out, at least here. I mean, sure, you can go to Amazon and get it in print or Kindle. But if you want an autographed copy by me, you know, by buying it in our Etsy store, the link is in the description box below, you can't do it because they sold out in 24 hours. That's what they do. So they're on back order. We've got another 100 or so coming in about a week or so. You know, it's like that book, The Lunatic. Everybody's like, oh, I want that. And we get it, 100, boom, gone in a day. Well, they're there now. So if you're waiting on The Lunatic, go get it. If you didn't hear that freaking growl, you're deaf. Something obviously wants to hear the story for the day. So let's get started, okay? This is my suspicion of what that creature may or may not have been. This comes from a story in this one, and we'll have it back in about a week. This thing's so heavy it's hard to even hold. I've got to rest my arm on my knee here. It's so heavy. It weighs 3 pounds. It's a big book. 800 pages. If you count the front and back covers. It's really $7.98. But hey, this is a page. 800 pages, 3 pounds. All right. So a lot of folks in our videos, some of our mysterious creature videos will comment, that's just a donkey. Go back to the city, you city slicker, you. It's obvious you've never lived in the country. Okay. The only cities I've ever lived in were Mosul and Manila. I'm not going back to those places. I'm an old country, well, whatever. I'm not going to jade. It's not a donkey, and this story proves it, and I think this story might illustrate what it was we saw there about 3 or 4 weeks ago in that video. So, let's just get right to it, okay? And I've got to skip the first few paragraphs because it talks about the previous story before this story, which has nothing to do with this story. So here we go. No one out here around me actually has donkeys. Well, actually, someone does now, but that part comes later. All right? Just keep that in mind. However, after hearing what clearly sounds like a donkey so many times and having pinpointed the sound to a particular direction, I finally decided to just stop and ask around about who has the donkey. Because I thought maybe it could be a donkey too. People were hearing donkeys in the videos. Let's check it out. My findings, to quote the young lady from Texas in the previous story, made my blood run cold. So, the first person I asked about a donkey was simply the first person I saw. I was out for a jog one morning, and I saw a woman, a white girl about 35 years old, loading something into the back of her car. She lived on the side of the road in a small house on a small property which bordered one of the very largest estates in our area. I simply said, "Hey, do you know if anyone out here has any donkeys?" She looked at me like I was going to rape her, slammed the trunk of her car, and then she ran inside her house. Something about donkeys. My first thoughts were, "You're not all that, Karen." But then, as I continued running, thinking about what had just happened, I realized I'd read the situation wrong. I'd never met that woman, but she'd passed me on the road many times while I'd been running, biking, or walking, and she'd always waved and smiled, and she was one of the few drivers out my way who always made sure to slow down and veer away from me as she passed me. She could not have been afraid of me, though she was clearly afraid of something. A week or so later, I was out on my mountain bike. I happened to be on the opposite side of the large estate that bordered Karen's property. There was an old house sitting by the road, and on the porch sat an old woman who appeared to be as old as the house. I would put both of them at about 100 years. This was not the first time I'd seen this old woman. I was used to seeing her there. Every time I biked by and she was there, she always waved and smiled, and I always waved and smiled back and said, "Good morning, young lady." I could always hear her giggle when I did that. On this day, I stopped. "Can I ask you a question, young lady?" I said, putting one foot down after stopping my bike only feet away from her rickety old porch. "Why, sure," she said with a smile. "Do you know if anyone out here has a donkey?" "I seem to hear one on occasion while I'm out and about on my property. I live right over the hill there." "I know where you live," she said. "Used to be my cousin's land you bought." This did not surprise me. I live in a place where everyone's related to everyone else except us. We're the outsiders who still, after 5 years here, only receive waves from the vast majority of generational locals or other outsiders who've invaded, like Karen down the road. "And you's just hearing old Cletus," she said, and then she laughed. "Old Cletus." "Cletus?" I said. "Is that the donkey's name?" "Used to be," she said. And then she leaned forward and spit a mouthful of tobacco juice off the porch, barely missing my foot. It hadn't occurred to me until then that she was chewing tobacco. It was the first time I'd seen a woman chewing tobacco, snuff actually, since leaving my native Appalachia many years ago. But hey, I guess I moved from Appalachia to the south, so it wasn't shocking. "Back when old Cletus was a living," she added. "Old Cletus been dead for 50 years. I know, I was there when he got killed." She spat again. "Well, I showed up right after old Cletus got killed. Happened out there on my other cousin's property." She pointed in the direction from where I'd always heard the donkey screams. "What killed him?" I asked. "Don't know," she said, gnawing on her snuff. "Most folks believe it was a mountain lion, but I think it was something different." "What do you think it was?" I asked. "Well," she said thoughtfully, "I think some things are best left unsaid." I felt entirely let down until she spoke again. When she did, she said, "But I'll tell you this much." I don't want to block your view. You never know. We've heard something growl back there. Keep getting my six. Something may or may not be creeping up on us. "But I'll tell you this much," she said. "Whatever it was that killed old Cletus stole his voice box. Been going around screaming just like old Cletus used to ever since. And now what in the hell lives for 50 years and don't die, other than a human? But I'm here to tell you, what y'all's hearing ain't no human, and it ain't no donkey." This story, by the way, is called "It Ain't No Donkey." "I'll tell you one thing," she said, standing slowly. She moved over to the edge of the porch and cleaned the snuff out of her lower lip with an index finger, throwing it on the ground where I saw she had quite a little pile of snuff balls. If'n you hear it on your property, better get inside the house." She turned and walked in her house like I wasn't even there after that. At the time, I was convinced she was putting me on. If she'd been cousins with the woman we bought our property from, then that would mean she was related to the worthless piece of welfare bum crap that used to take the hay off our land, and she probably didn't like me, even though she'd never met me, and I'd always been friendly to her in passing. She was probably just trying to scare me off my land so her piece of crap relative could start taking the hay again. Let me tell you, when you get into an area where the same families have lived for generations, you notice that they've developed an odd sort of entitlement mentality. Not that the government owes them a monthly check, but that they're entitled to have a say in what anyone new to their community does or does not do. They think they own the damn place or something. But my gut told me this was wrong thinking. It's not. It's really like that. Wrong thinking about this donkey thing, okay? This little old lady actually seemed like a really nice woman, and I doubt that she disliked me just because I stopped allowing her piece of crap, deadbeat, good-for-nothing, annoying welfare bum neighbor to take our hay. Should I tell you how I really feel about that guy? In time, I would come to believe that she was telling the truth. Now, as far as Karen goes, and the donkeys that are in our area, well, that young lady was no Karen at all. I would end up meeting her for real about a year later. Our kids, it turns out, are in the same grade, though in different classes at school, and I saw her at a school function. She actually approached me and told me she sees me running and biking all the time and that she loved all the trees my wife and I had planted on our property. After talking with this lady, whose name is not Karen, for several minutes, I reminded her of the morning I had asked her about a donkey. She apologized for having made me feel like a serial rapist. She said it scared her knowing that I had been hearing the donkey screams too, because she'd heard the same story the old woman told me, but she'd heard it from someone else. As it turns out, the old piece of crap that used to get my hay used to get the hay off of her family's property until she and her husband bought it a couple of years before we bought ours. Just like us, this family had bought their small 5 or 6 acres tract of land for their purposes, not to simply grow free hay for some generational local. And the hay collector took issue with them as well when they told him he could no longer take the hay. I guess he'd passively aggressively stalked them for a while too, just like he did us. And at one point, he told their daughter, who was my son's age, that the donkey man was going to get her. The woman told me they had actually called the police on him for that, but the sheriff was his cousin, so nothing was done. You know, this is interesting because this is the first week of back to school, and already this creeper, this annoying neighbor of crayon infamy, already when the bus has come to drop my son off in front of our house, he comes down and waits for the bus to come to watch our kid get off the bus and just stand there with his arms crossed staring at us like this the whole time. Dude's like in his 60s now. He has no children. There's no reason for him to be down there watching a child, especially from a family that has no contact with him, no relationship, and has made it clear we want no communication with him. But it's just that passive-aggressive intimidation thing of, I'm standing on my property, what I'm doing is not illegal, say something, I dare you. You know what I mean? But I don't say anything, but I do record him. When we're there and I go to the bus to retrieve my son, I make sure to record him on film. So every day that he comes down to watch our 10-year-old son get off the bus, which if you ask me is just beyond mildly inappropriate, I have it on video. The lady told me that shortly after I'd asked her about the donkey, she and her husband bought a couple of donkeys so that when her daughter heard donkeys, she would assume it was hers. The lady told me that in only a few short months it worked. Though she and her husband hate taking care of the donkeys, and they hate how loud they are glad their daughter no longer fears the so-called donkey man, and the whole family sleeps better. Though she admitted that, like myself now, she wonders just what in the hell is out there making the screams of a donkey from far away. Sometimes by day, sometimes in the dead of night. Could it be a skinwalker, like our young lady from Texas from the previous story suggested? Could it be the ghost of old Cletus? Or could it be Bigfoot Sasquatch mimicking the sounds of a donkey? Potentially. The end. There's something going on out here. Just in this video alone, you heard at least 2 low growls. At times we do hear what sounds like a donkey, but as the old woman confirmed, and as the younger woman confirmed, it ain't no donkey. And it makes one wonder, what might some of the derelicts out here know that the rest of us don't? Is the land cursed? Are there cryptids of unknown origin out here? Who's to say? But I know this, we're not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. So in time we may or may not find out. Make sure to keep checking back. Check back in, see how this hog is going, see what may or may not be out here. And check back to see when this 3-pound, 800-page book, if you count the front and back cover, is back in stock. And until then, buy autographed copies of The Lunatic from our Etsy store. The link is in the description box below. We'll see you for more next time.